Okay, so welcome everybody to another installment of the PANEN webinar series. We're very excited to be joined by Beth Stark, who is a representative from the PA Beef Council. Beth brings a wealth of experience and knowledge around nutrition, around beef in particular, marketing, outreach, and we're very pleased that you're able to join us. Thank you so much to everyone who was able to take some time out of their day and join us for this webinar. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, I'll be moderating discussion at the end of Beth's presentation, so please feel free to put those comments or questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and I will make sure we get to all of those. One quick plug is we have scheduled another webinar next Friday, so keep an eye on your inbox for the invite for that. That'll be presented by me, and that'll be about our social marketing campaign. But today we will be looking at affordable nutrition strategies for shopping on a budget. So Beth, thank you so much, and the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Eli. I feel like we started this conversation back in maybe late spring, early summer, and here we are. So I'm so glad that this has come full circle and that I'm able to be presenting with you all today. And thanks to everyone who is joining the webinar. I'm super grateful you're sharing your Friday lunch hour with me. So as Eli introduced me, I'm Beth Stark. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. My current role is with the PA Beef Council. I'm a director of channel marketing and nutrition outreach. Been a dietitian since 2004. So it's been quite a long haul. So I've had a pretty varied background. Most recently, I was working in the retail setting. So some of the information that I'll be sharing today really does tie back to some of the communications that were shared in my retail life about a year and a half ago, where I spent about 12 years of my career. But really happy to be here today working with PANEN. So here's a quick look at today's learning objectives. Following the presentation, you'll be able to understand the impact of food prices and current consumer challenges as they relate to shopping on a budget, which certainly will benefit how you're communicating to those that you're working with out in the community, maybe even yourself. So hopefully you'll get a great tidbit or something new that you can apply to your own shopping habits as well. You'll discover opportunities to share effective strategies for shopping on a budget, gain creative solutions for using nutrient-rich and affordable staple foods in programming, and recognize the importance of addressing access to food when providing nutrition recommendations, which you all probably on this call know, but I felt like this was still important to keep in here, and we'll get to that slide in a little while here. So just to share a little bit of background, again, mentioned that I'm with the PA Beef Council, Director of Channel Marketing and Nutrition Outreach. So I think it's always just interesting to understand a little bit more about my background, like why is a dietitian working with the Beef Council? What do you do? What does that look like? So I am privileged to be the first dietitian on staff, working with them about part-time. So I came on board about a year ago in June of 2021. So it's really been a great experience, a huge learning experience for me to this point, again, coming from retail, no exposure, a real experience working in agriculture. So this is a whole new world for me, but I'm loving all the new things I'm learning and sharing out to audiences just like this one. So I serve in my role as a dietitian, I serve 3 different audiences through channel marketing, which includes engaging with retail dietitians, consumers, and healthcare professionals, such as physicians, dietitians, nurse practitioners, nurses, etc. And so for these audiences, what I'm really tasked with doing is sharing beef's positive messaging related to nutrition, cooking and meal solutions, and the latest science as it pertains to lean beef and its role in an overall nutritious eating pattern. So some of the photos here, I always love, I think a picture is of course worth 1,000 words. So some of these photos depict me working with nutrition interns as part of a farm tour. I'm guessing you can figure out which one that is. So this is a group of Cedar Crest College interns in Allentown. We planned this amazing farm tour in like mid to late April, thinking, okay, Pennsylvania, it'll be great weather. It was one of the coldest spring days I've ever experienced experienced in April. Snowflakes, wind, it was wild, but they were troopers. And we had a really great experience there with a local producer, as you can see in that jacket there on the left, working with the Pittsburgh Penguins team chef that's in the bottom middle. So that was obviously part of a consumer education outreach type of communication, where we did a recipe demo and a video that was talking about how to beef up your burger with different nutritious ingredients and tying that into the dietary guidelines. The top kind of middle there where you see me above a chef in that frame that was engaging with a dietitian group, part of the Academy of Nutrition, one of the smaller subgroups. So this was a virtual cooking class where we talked about some different recipe solutions and prepared a recipe live with that group. So it was like a cook along kind of thing, which was a lot of fun. Top right, this was actually just from this week. I got to appear on Good Day PA in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So this is a lifestyle show. Probably get to appear in the media about once to twice a quarter. So here we're showcasing different back to school luncheon and dinner ideas for busy families. And then the bottom right here is one of my counterparts, Caitlin, and I at the PA Academy of Nutrition meeting back in the spring. So you can see it's pretty all encompassing, but touching those different audiences in a lot of different ways. And above all, sharing some of the latest science on beef and again, how it pertains to an overall healthy eating pattern. And here just a little bit more about the PA Beef Council. Maybe you have some exposure, maybe you've heard of us, but I think it's just great to kind of explain the background and who we are. So as you can see, we are a nonprofit organization working on behalf of nearly 18,000 beef, dairy, and veal producers within the Commonwealth. We're funded by the Beef Checkoff, which is a program that focuses on maintaining and building strong demand for beef. And just to further explain what that means is that every time a beef animal is sold within the state, dollars are exchanged and collected to fund education, promotion, programming, consumer research, recipe and product development, and so forth, to basically fund my position and then enable us to outreach and work with groups just like you and others that we do across the state. You can see our mission obviously is to work on behalf of beef farmers and ranchers, building demand with consumers of all ages. So if you're kind of wondering, okay, now this is PANEN, best with the PA Beef Council. What is the synergy here? How did this all come to fruition? So just to further I detail out. So how we kind of got connected is, again, in my role, it's all about getting out in front of different audiences, sharing education, sharing resources, and really just serving as kind of a trusted voice for individuals that might have questions or that have needs or that we could better serve within our state. So really, when we first had the conversations with both Eli and then Kristen on the team, we determined there was some really great synergy to share resources out to all of you who are engaging regularly with individuals in need on, in low income challenges or others, and really helping to talk to that audience and those individuals about eating on a budget as a whole. So I promise you this whole presentation is not all about beef. There's beef subtle messaging throughout, but it's more about talking about budget-friendly meals and solutions as a whole with the addition of reasonable portions of lean beef. So without further ado, now we'll kind of get right on into it. So we're really going to today discuss some various ways that consumers can add affordable food to their grocery shopping trips and really make the most of their budget. So to kick us off, everyone has been exposed to inflation. We're all experiencing this every time we shop for not only groceries and kind of our in-home food essentials at the gas pump, at the where else? Any stores you're really shopping, in retail, we are experiencing and in kind of handling our budgets in a different way because of inflation. So this is affecting consumer shopping habits and eating habits in a lot of ways, which I'll get to in just a minute. But the good news is that many of you in this audience are already experts at recognizing your patients and clients don't have to sacrifice good nutrition in order to shop within their means, and you're experts at guiding individuals to such solutions. So whether you yourself are a budget shopper or you've just been working with this population for a long period of time, you kind of have a good understanding, of how to best serve this population. Here, I think what this slide really depicts, again, it's no surprise. This was information from August. I'm just showcasing kind of some of the percentage price increases from last year to this year, August. Of course, everything is up, including meat, poultry, fish, and eggs, and some of those protein foods. So kind of my goal with this slide here is just helping to arm you with, again, where those prices are the highest and really helping you to hopefully understand how you can develop programming that not only includes these foods, but maybe works to scale the foods in a different way for an individual you're educating or providing nutrition recommendations on, to maybe steer them away from a food that there is a strain on the pricing, or just incorporating that food food in a different way, in a creative way, to help them fit within their budget. And you can, again, kind of see, that everything across the board has been really undergoing this increase over time. So in terms of consumer habits, you can probably look at yourself and think, how am I shopping differently? How are my habits different? I know for me, I've definitely been adapting kind of my normal routine with food purchases and meal planning in a different way, just to accommodate this additional food cost. So just like consumers, we're all doing the same thing, other consumers. So we're certainly seeking the value for the dollar and cutting back on certain items. And unfortunately, some of those items that our consumers are cutting back on could include, animal protein, even fresh produce from week to week to reduce the cost. So they're really shopping, for those sales. They're looking for tips and tricks for shopping on a budget, and they are cutting out some of those really nutritious, wholesome foods that we as healthcare professionals or providers talking about nutrition to a population would really want them to be including. Of course, they are also scaling back on different things like sugar sweetened beverages, desserts, and those things as well, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but sacrificing produce, for example, because it's out of season or because the price isn't where it should be for that individual's budget, that kind of hurts, right? As a healthcare professional, we don't want them to be doing that. The other thing, of course, is that they are just really paying attention more so to what they're purchasing. Of course, aren't we all? And they may be shopping in multiple stores to get the best deals. I know I previously would have just shopped maybe 2 stores locally here. I'm in central Pennsylvania in Selinsgrove, and now I feel like I'm dabbling in a couple different stores more often to really just seek out and find where I can spend and stretch my food dollar a little bit more. So because our consumers and the individuals that you're working with on a regular basis are really being forced to be selective when they're shopping, they're probably making ingredient swaps in their everyday cooking. And so this could be for a couple of different reasons. It might be from, according to a lack of accessibility, that they just can't find an ingredient, or maybe if they're tied into a food assistance program, a specific ingredient isn't available. The cost, of course, maybe they're swapping ingredients in and out to modify the nutrition profile or simplify a recipe. Again, they're looking to also stretch portions in any way possible. So I love slides like this, and a couple of the upcoming slides will reflect this format, but talking about different activation areas. So I'll get to those in a second, but so just providing you all as this audience with some easy swaps so you could guide the individuals you're working with, your patients, your clients, to some of these swaps to help them save money, optimize the nutrition in their eating pattern, and also use what they have available at their fingertips. So a couple different ideas here could be to incorporate ground oats as a substitute for breadcrumbs. So maybe they're breading chicken, or maybe they're making, meatballs, for example. Ground oats could potentially be an option as a substitute. They could use rice to thicken soups, or other types of recipes like casseroles and things. They could combine beans with lean ground beef or other types of ground meat and tacos. This is one of my personal favorite habits, just to really stretch the portions out, boost the plant-based protein, and also get some more fiber in a simple taco recipe as well. Of course, they could also double up on vegetables in their stir fry, whether it's canned vegetables or frozen vegetables. Doing so really does help to elevate the amount of portions kind of coming out of that meal, and then you're getting all that additional nutrition benefit from vegetables. So a couple different activation ideas. So I'm not really sure of the setting of everyone that's here on this call. I'm hopeful some of these ideas will be inspiring and maybe get you some new ideas to execute kind of in wherever you're working and what your space is. But here a couple different ideas could be to design an infographic that depicts how to combine some of these different staples with everyday meals. So maybe it's combining something like frozen broccoli with XYZ ingredients to make a really quick and simple meal. Or maybe it is something like, again, using rice to thicken a soup, and how you could educate on that. I think visual education tools are just so effective. I personally love to use them in my own education opportunities. So that could be something you could do also for the clientele that you're working with. Another fun idea, again, coming from retail and working through the retail setting as a dietitian during the height of COVID, I know that virtual education classes and opportunities are just still so popular, and they're a great way to really outreach to individuals in their home where they're comfortable and reach a lot of different people. So creating a virtual class where, again, maybe you want to showcase something as simple as, beans to elevate the nutrition and add bulk to a recipe, or something like that. Just, tying in with some of these different easy swap ideas to showcase different solutions within an overall, maybe like a 20 to 30-minute education class. Maybe they're even invited to cook along if that's realistic. But I think the more you can kind of provide the solutions and then help walk them through some of these different ideas can really be effective to guide behavior change and just give them the confidence they need to eat better at home and, again, stretch their budget. So as you just saw, a couple slides ago, I mentioned the prices of various animal proteins, not just beef, of course, and eggs is up over 10% from August of 2021. So here's a really quick graphic. I mentioned I love graphics. I did not create this one, but I just think it kind of like jumps off the screen a little bit. And it's a great education tool. But here, this graphic kind of depicts on how an individual could optimize the iron, choline, B vitamins, and protein that are coming from beef, maybe in their diets, through lower cost alternative cuts. So there's a couple different solutions that, of course, we know filet mignon is one of the premium types of cuts of beef. There will be lower cost, other more affordable options that could be incorporated, if an individual is looking for some of these solutions. And there's a number of these resources I'll share throughout the presentation. If there's interest, I'm happy to provide them along to Eli to share on with you after the fact. But here, I think this is just a great visual depiction of potentially an education tool. A quick note on beef nutrition. So as you can see, all it takes is about a 3-ounce portion to consume over 10 essential nutrients. So if your patients or clients enjoy beef already, reminding them about the recommended portion size, which again, as the dietitian, we're talking about that 3-ounce portion. That's what the research is tied into, and, ideally looking for lean cuts whenever possible. But I think reminding them of the portion size, if they are, again, dealing with that budget challenge, when you're eating less and you're eating what's recommended and then incorporating lower cost staples to, again, boost the overall portions of a meal, you can fit some of these different nutritious protein choices in an eating pattern. So this is just I think, again, a great depiction of some of the key nutrients in beef. Just a couple to quickly call out, would be iron. So iron is one of those nutrients of public health concern for infants, and particularly those receiving human milk, as well as women of childbearing age. Even youth and adolescents typically aren't getting enough iron. So we're getting, about, what is it here? About 14% of the daily value of iron. And this is heme iron. So we know it's highly absorbed in the body compared to other types of iron, plant-based sources of iron, which again are a great addition to animal-based sources of iron in the diet as well. But this could be potentially a solution for getting iron intake into an individual in a way they're already eating animal protein. Zinc, of course, I feel like zinc has really risen to the top as a popular nutrient and a mineral that we think about these days because it's connection to immunity. So beef does provide zinc as well. So just a couple of those quick items to pull out there in terms of beef nutrition. Now, shifting gears back again to some of the additional kind of budget focused content. As you can see, it's not just eating at home that's become more expensive, which again, if you're someone who likes to dine out and it's something you do socially or for entertainment, you definitely see the price differences when you are going out to your favorite restaurant, whether it's a full service restaurant or even something like a fast casual where you might be grabbing it and eating it at home. So the importance of getting confident in the kitchen and really learning and teaching, and again, in all of your roles, basic cooking skills is just so essential. We know it's essential as a life skill, and really helping to inspire individuals to do so is just so important in the overall nutrition and budget scheme of I guess, kind of healthy living. And then again, that's where you all come in. So again, I don't know necessarily what everyone's background is and if you're able to conduct different education opportunities and classes and things like that. But, again, just trying to inspire that, cooking and eating at home is something that anyone can do, and they're able to eat more healthfully as a result of that. So in addition to saving money, they're able to control the ingredients that are being used in different recipes so they can modify the type and the amount of fat in a recipe as one example, or look to different and lower sodium seasoning options, or kind of like trim sodium down from maybe what they're eating in terms of packaged foods by pairing those packaged foods with some fresh or frozen foods. So, having basic culinary knowledge is just, again, so essential in that healthy eating toolbox. But we know a lot of folks are not super confident in the kitchen. So maybe they never grew up cooking, maybe they just never had a reason to cook. And so it's not something they've prioritized, which of course is a big barrier. So if you're not feeling overly confident and you don't want to, maybe you're not even open to learning a new skill, it can really inhibit your ability to cook at home and make this a priority for yourself and your family. I think the other thing to note in terms of just kitchen confidence is cooking, and the actual act of cooking is one small piece of this overall puzzle. It's really important to also educate on how to meal plan, how to write a grocery list, what it means to go shopping, and how you're bringing those ingredients together and safely storing them, and then properly handling them to ensure that meals are both appetizing, nutritious, and safe to eat. So some different activation ideas could be, again, if you have access to developing a virtual class series, it could be on social media, or it could be something that's done live as a cook along. This could be something that could be a lot of fun to coordinate, with your audience or individuals that you're working with regularly. One example could be how to batch cook potentially with a pot roast, which I'll get into in just a few moments. Maybe holding a workshop on how to plan and prep meals in advance. So again, coming from my retail background, I'll say when we would hold different meal planning, like 101 classes, they were always hugely popular because to some of us, meal planning might seem like, oh gosh, this is so easy. Why is it so complicated? Why can't people just do this? But it can be really just tricky, and it's a lot to think about. And if, again, you don't have that confidence in the kitchen, it may be an area that you just need to sharpen your skill set on. So maybe a simple workshop on how to plan and prep meals in advance, and how to go through that process of writing a grocery list and so on. And then in terms of what kind of like a meal preparation type of, opportunity could be if you're batch cooking, so for example, maybe you're purchasing one of those more affordable, yet lean cuts of beef, like a top round or bottom round. And then you can showcase how to utilize this. So maybe starting it in the crock pot and doing a slow cooked kind of roast beef kind of protein. And, showcasing how you could how some of that protein could be frozen for a later meal, how you can include it into different leftovers, and just different ways to kind of like cook once, eat twice, and then extending the protein with other types of nutritious ingredients. So there's a lot you can really do as far as fun activation ideas that could inspire, individuals that you're working with. Some other kind of like topics I would think for basic culinary classes. So batch cooking, of course, would be one, how to meal plan and prep, basic chopping, slicing, dicing, maybe stir fry, maybe different ways to reduce food waste. So there's a lot of different things that you could kind of consider as far as program ideas. I think also another thing to know would be it's critical, of course, we're talking about kitchen confidence and what does that mean above all, and you're probably doing this, but just to reinforce that it's not always safe to assume that everyone has access to a stovetop or even a can opener. So really understanding what someone has in their home, what they're able to cook with, are they able to even use a can opener? And maybe they don't have strength in their hands. So there's a lot of things to consider when you are talking about cooking and how to bring that to life, for your audience. So again, reviewing some of those things with them before you just assume different things are at their fingertips. So here, just throwing in a recipe idea from one of our collections on the pabeef.org website. So something like this could be leveraged for a cooking class or workshop, like I mentioned. So you can see here, this like top round beef roast was slow cooked in a crock pot. And then there's different ways you could bring it together with some nutritious vegetables to either freeze and eat later, or maybe to do kind of a meal prep for the course of the week to eat this as dinner, lunch, or whenever you're a little bit time strapped. So resources and recipes like this you would find easily, readily available on our website. And I'm happy to share those specific ideas as well. Of course, I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't touch on the importance of reducing food waste as a cost-saving measure. And I have to say, now at this point, when I throw something away, whether it's because maybe it's past its shelf life or it kind of got stashed in the back of the refrigerator, I'm sure that happens to all of you on here every now and then as well. A helpful trick has been to almost visualize throwing, a dollar bill in the trash can or whatever that is. It really just seems to be an impactful way to think, I probably should have done better, right? I should have checked the dates better. I should have assessed my refrigerator. And, the last thing you want to do is waste food when you're trying to save money on food. It's just not a good feeling. So really helping your patients and clients, the individuals that you're serving in those populations, understand and really help to, just better understand and clarify food labeling, and how to properly store perishable foods so that they are able to reduce overall food waste and, again, ultimately save money. So again, here that meal planning skill can really be so important so that you're not overbuying, or you have a good plan for things that you do buy, so that you know that it's something that you can use within a safe time frame and that will be at its best eating experience within that window. So a couple different activation ideas here could be to create, again, imagery for use that would be in print or digital that inspires creative use of foods that might soon go bad. So, back in different education programs, we would call this almost like rescuing those types of foods. So you open the fridge and all of a sudden there's spinach that's really wilted and it's not looking so fresh and vibrant anymore. Throw that into a smoothie, or, saute it in a little bit of olive oil and garlic, and maybe combine it with some eggs or something like that. So different ways to easily transform those kind of not so prime ripe fruits or vegetables or other types of perishable products that are still safe to eat, just not at their prime, into a whole new type of meal, again, to keep it out of the trash can and save that money. Another idea could be, if you have something that's been prepared, maybe you did a really great job at batch cooking and you have vegetable soup that you just can't eat within a couple of days, put it in their freezer, maybe add that date, and then help them understand that this is something they could use within a couple of months. And again, it doesn't go to waste. So there's just a couple different ideas of how to activate on some of these different topic ideas. I know that kind of proper storage, food safety, that's not always such a fun thing to discuss. And it's like, oh, how can I get creative on it? But it is just so important. So I think these are some different ideas that could bring it to life for individuals. Another fun idea, we attempted this again during COVID, where people were kind of struggling to find different ingredients in the store, and they're trying to use up things and just really get creative with ingredients they have in their home. So maybe like a Top Chef type of video series or a social media live, so like a Facebook Live, or even just a class that really showcases how to use random ingredients to transform them into a whole new meal. So maybe you have leftover cooked taco seasoned ground beef. What in the world can you do with that? Like coming up with different ways to really put this to use and a couple different meal solutions using what you have. It can be a lot of fun. I like to challenge myself with those types of things too. And I feel like that's how I cook a lot of the time is, we do so much planning, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm just going to throw all this stuff together and it's going to be a random, grain bowl or something. Now, for quite a while, bulk bins were the last thing you would have access to in the supermarket. So I feel like they are coming back, and I see them in the supermarkets locally here in Selinsgrove. And this can really serve as a place where you can purchase, and individuals can purchase certain foods for less. It also does help to reduce food waste because you can buy what you need. You can buy as much or as little as you want. And it's also nice because you can kind of experiment with a food. So, maybe you see a really great new grain or something in a bin like this, and you don't want to commit to a larger amount because, again, if you don't like it or it's not something that you want to prepare again, you potentially will have to waste it, or maybe you just will eat it and not enjoy it. But at any rate, you get to kind of adjust accordingly, sample and experiment smaller amounts by shopping in the bulk bins. So something like oats, beans, lentils, spices, those are a couple different items you might see in a bulk bin kind of section within the grocery store. So they have a long shelf life. They're very nutritious, and there are different types of staples that you can use in a lot of different ways. And the other thing too is, when shopping for protein, so whether you're shopping for chicken or for beef or pork, looking for those larger family size packages. I feel like I've definitely got on board with this, much more frequently as of late. And then, kind of reducing that overall unit price by buying that bulk package. So maybe it's like a family pack, 3 pounds or up to 5 pounds, or different cuts that are just a larger kind of portion that are intended for more than one meal. And while it does take a couple extra minutes when you get home from the grocery store to kind of repackage that protein, it's a small kind of investment in overall saving money. And then you have those protein options in your freezer ready to use when you need a really quick last minute kind of meal. So what I like to do personally is when buying bulk size packages, maybe I wrap the chicken breast individually. So I have them on hand for whether I want to cook 4 of them at once, or maybe I just want to grill 2 in one evening. The same thing would go for like ground beef or other types of ground meat. So packaging it down into smaller portions, like a 1 pound package package, or a half pound, and just kind of wrapping it up, securing it with some plastic wrap, dating it, and then that protein will be good for up to a couple of months without a loss of quality. And just making sure when you are freezing products like this, and especially highly perishable foods, you just want to make sure you have the dates on there and that you're rotating them so that, again, when you use them, they're at their best quality, the best flavor, and some of those different things. So a couple activation ideas here could be, if you are doing maybe anything in store, maybe you're able to go to do a store tour or collaborate with someone in the supermarket to do an education opportunity in a grocery store. Or again, you could even kind of walk through with this individual what that might look like if they are shopping in bulk. As far as taking a shortcut goes, I know I kind of like to adapt the semi-homemade approach in my own home. So it's great to prepare everything from scratch, but sometimes time just doesn't really allow for it. And sometimes you just don't feel like it, right? So stocking up on some budget-friendly pantry and freezer staples is a really easy way to throw together a meal in minutes. And while this, again, may be obvious to some of you here in this audience, it may not be so obvious to others. So really just showcasing with them, some different ways that they could help to save time on the preparation and also be mindful of what they're spending. So yes, we know that convenience foods that are either heat and eat or even frozen, and then they have to be heated up, they do usually come at a more premium price. So something like prepared meatballs or burgers, marinated chicken, when they've kind of like had that extra step done, they are more expensive. So helping individuals understand how they can do it themselves, save money by, simply preparing these things when they get home. They could always, again, freeze meatballs if they're making them. Marinating chicken is super easy. Start that right when you get home from the store, and then you have it to use in a couple of days. But the more that an individual can do these things themselves, it does take a couple extra minutes, but overall you're able to control the cost a little bit more, as well as the nutrition. Again, watching the amount of sodium that's being added, kind of adjusting ingredients according to your family's needs or your health condition needs. Canned and frozen fruits and vegetables would certainly be another option as well. And providing different ways that they could easily use some of those different ingredients in a variety of different recipe ideas and so forth. So some other ideas, again, could be like a video series. Here's some different ideas on some topics that might be relevant, handouts or graphics for social media. Again, these could be some easy solutions for how to put together different ingredients to make a meal solution, which I have a couple on a slide in just a couple of minutes here that I'll showcase as well. So some additional considerations, again, I know this is a pretty varied audience that I'm speaking to. So I think just above all, knowing your audience and who you're talking to, what their background is, kind of like what some of their lived experience is, to better kind of tailor your recommendations and, help support them in any way you can to optimize their nutrition and live well and feel well and so forth. So just a couple of questions just to kind of run through, as you're maybe having conversations with these individuals. Would you buy specific ingredients? Would you make certain recipes at home potentially? Have you used certain ingredients you might be suggesting to them? And what does that look like? How can you help them like get comfortable with trying new things? If you can buy in bulk and like look for some different new ingredient options. If you're talking about recipes and providing recipe and meal solutions, again, knowing what cooking equipment someone has at home and what they have access to at home is just so crucial, because if you're talking about a slow cooker recipe, that's great, but if someone doesn't even have access to something like that, then that makes it a little bit more frustrating and discouraging for them. So just a couple of other kind of key points to consider. Again, you may be doing this already, but I think it's just helpful to reinforce a couple of different considerations just to better serve your population. And then as far as some creative combinations, these are the types of things that I kind of like to put together as far as like a graphic would go. So I am using some different, beef specific ideas, but, this could be something you could put together with some imagery. So like, cooked ground beef with some cooked rice, salsa, beans, and shredded cheese. And then you have a really great grain bowl. Maybe adding ground beef to scrambled eggs with some diced tomatoes or salsa, again, adding beans in there and shredded cheese. Ground beef and packaged mac and cheese, plus some canned tomatoes and maybe baby spinach thrown in there, or shredded beef and potatoes and salsa with some frozen corn. So just in different ways, these are almost like no recipe ideas. Sometimes people will tie in with those a little bit more easily because they feel a lot less complicated. You don't need to measure anything, just kind of combine these ingredients in any amounts you like. This may be another way to just help reach those people that aren't so confident in the kitchen, but they need some ideas and they'll benefit from different ideas here. I think I may have I don't know how that extra slide got in there, but we'll just keep on going here. So here, again, I'm assuming the majority of this audience here is familiar with this. This is something that, again, just I think it's obviously important to address the food access point. So healthcare professionals, and no matter what setting you are, you do have the power to influence food insecurity. So if you aren't using the hunger vital sign, here's just what that screening tool would look like. Again, I'm assuming the majority of you are, but just a couple of key questions you would engage your, the patients, the clients, the individuals you'll see, to understand where they are in terms of food security and what they have access to for their household. And then here are just some additional resources. PAbeef.org would definitely be your one-stop shop for some of this different content. Many of the images I showed here and so on and so forth. Again, I'm happy to share some specific links to articles or other information if there's interest. But here's a great section on beef on a budget and some different recipe and meal ideas here. Again, maybe they'll benefit you and maybe they'll benefit, the individuals you're working with. But here's just some really great ways to utilize different sources of protein, and especially beef on a budget with some of those ideas. And then if you're one of those individuals that needs continuing education credits, the Beef Nutrition Education Hub is a really great one-stop shop where you can access different content. You can access on-demand types of webinars and different types of things that you could actually earn credits there. So if you are a dietitian or potentially a physician or just an individual that needs credits, you would have access to a different variety of education credits here at this section on the website. And I think with that, I'll say thank you for your time today. And again, I'd love to answer any questions or just have some conversation if there are discussion points or anything that anyone would want to know. So I'll turn it back to you, Eli, or I guess I could even check the chat myself.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Beth. That was a really wonderful presentation. That was a lot of information. So everybody, take a sip of water, take a breath. That was a whole lot of information.
Whole lot.
Really important stuff, but thank you. So if you are an attendee, please put your questions or comments in the chat or the Q&A section, and we will get to those. If there's something that you would like Beth to explain in a little bit more detail or reframe in some way, please share that. I had one question, which was when someone is choosing these different, like a beef protein or some other protein, and I know that you're kind of tasked with promoting beef, but how does beef kind of compare nutritionally and price-wise to some of the other protein options?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great question. Again, above all, I am a registered dietitian leaning on the science, and we know the dietary guidelines for healthy Americans, or for dietary guidelines for Americans. I guess they kind of took that word healthy out, but dietary guidelines, we really are educating about the variety of protein. So certainly my recommendation is to include a variety. So, certainly include the plant-based sources of protein, include the other sources of lean animal protein, whether that's pork, whether it's chicken, of course, beef. Make sure you're getting the seafood in some form or fashion 2 times a week, which is also the recommendation. So, I think we know that variety is really, for one, the spice of life. And it's also the best way to optimize your nutrition, because you get so much different nutrition from those different foods rather than eating the same old thing all the time. In terms of pricing and things like that, it's hard to say and what you would get for the nutrition profile of different sources of protein. Just like any other food, the profiles are slightly different from one type of animal protein to another. So if you're someone that needs more iron in your diet, then I would steer you towards maybe the lean beef cut options. Maybe you kind of favor, different types of poultry. Certainly then look for those leaner cuts of chicken, and just really compare, I guess, when you're shopping, something I can really recommend. So, looking at the unit prices across all types of protein, when you have your meal plan, figure out how those types of protein can fit within the overall picture of your week and the recipes you have access to, and then kind of decide by that. And sometimes, just seeing what's in the kind of on sale, or even if you are able to find, products that have to be sold maybe in 2 days, I personally love when I see those like red stickers or the yellow stickers, so if something has to be sold 2 days from the day that you're there in the store, that might completely turn your meal plan upside down, which is good, so get that lower cost protein and, maybe swap it in for a meal instead of, what you had on your meal plan, and you'll be able to save a little bit of money, or even purchase that protein and freeze it, which I do a lot, honestly. So definitely check those things out. And if it's within that date, and you can use it or freeze it by those dates, do so. It's a money saving kind of effort.
Yeah,
So
cool.
long-winded answer to your question there, Eli.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I really like that. It's like we're leaning on the variety. And that certainly is the spice of life. I have another question. What you've mentioned it a couple times, but what do you mean by lean proteins? And
Yes.
how do we distinguish a lean protein from, if I have two pieces of meat in front of me, how can I make that decision to say, oh, well, one is going to be lean, and then why would that be more nutritious?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And again, this is kind of coming from like, if you're, we know that, animal protein is a source of saturated fat. So the leaner cuts will have less saturated fat, and less total cholesterol as well, than some of the higher fat cuts. So, if you're talking about, we'll start with poultry. So we're talking about like a chicken breast is going to be leaner, and it does have less saturated fat than like a chicken thigh might, for example. If you're doing ground chicken, looking for like a maybe ground chicken breast, that would also be leaner, because it has less of the dark meat in, there will be less overall saturated fat from that specific food. Pork would be like a pork tenderloin kind of option. Now, in terms of beef, so, you'd be looking for like a 90% lean ground beef or less. So that's like 90, 93, 96. Those are some different options you might see depending on where you shop. Now, where it can be a little bit tricky, and I love to talk about this topic because I think it's a really easy trick. But so if you're shopping for like a roast or a steak, like there's so many different options. So how do you really know when you're kind of faced with them in the meat case? So a couple words you would look for on the label would be the word loin. So like sirloin, or tenderloin, or a strip loin, like a strip steak potentially, or round. So like I mentioned, top round or bottom round. So those are like your roasts. So those are leaner cuts. So again, they would have, less total fat, less saturated fat, than some of the other cuts. And, we do have to be mindful of saturated fats in our diet. So again, yes, I am here with the PA Beef Council, but saturated fat, can increase inflammation. And, it's also tied to different types of conditions. So in the big picture, it's important to, again, vary that protein and choose the leaner cuts to keep that saturated fat intake across the board within reason. So just to further stress that, as well. So I'll stop. Pause.
No, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And I guess when it comes to ground beef products, I've seen the leaner varieties tend to be more expensive. But when it comes to some of the like whole pieces, like a sirloin or something, it seems that the ones that are more marbled and fattier tend to be more expensive. So is there a reason for that kind of switch? When it's ground, it maybe the leaner fats are more expensive, or the leaner meats are more expensive, but if it's a full cut, they maybe tend to be less expensive. Is that accurate?
So if I think I understand your question, so like, I mean, again, kind of in the beef world, I'll kind of go down that path a little bit. I mean, marbling is like one of those things, like, completely separate from a nutrition conversation. So I'll take my dietitian hat off there for a second. The marbling, of course, is what adds the kind of the tender texture. It does add flavor. So something like a ribeye, which is not a lean cut, but it is a delicious cut. So, if you have access to that, enjoy it, but just know it is a higher saturated fat source of beef. So that would be something that does have more marbling. And so there's kind of more of a premium type of option, for example, maybe than like another cut that would be leaner, that, like maybe a bottom round roast, that might be something, again, it's great for the crock pot because all the moisture that's kind of created with slow cooking, that adds so much moisture, it tenderizes a more tough cut of meat. So that's a really good way to use a less expensive cut of beef, for example, or other protein, but yet still have a really good eating experience because it does tenderize it. And, it's not tough and chewy, and it really does make it nice and pleasant to eat. And then in terms of ground beef, yeah, so depending on, again, where you're shopping, every kind of place is a little bit different. It can be a little bit more expensive. So again, I think this is where if you can look for the unit prices and shop like for potentially a larger size portion, if that's feasible, and maybe break it down to have smaller portions or to freeze it for later. We're looking for those kind of like the must sell types of options that are a reduced type of price. There you can find some better options. Sometimes, if I'm cooking like pasta sauce, for example, real easy meal, whole grain pasta that's cooked, a jar of pasta sauce and some ground beef and a kind of in that sauce, there I feel like, okay, half of a pound of meat is appropriate. So there you're dividing that cost, getting a little bit more out of your purchase. So I think too, emphasizing the portion piece, we all maybe want to eat an 8-ounce steak. That's not recommended for a lot of different reasons, but that's going to cost more as well. Or again, just any source of animal protein. You want to stick to that 3-ounce portion, and be mindful of that.
And just visually, what does 3 ounces look like? If I don't have a scale, how can are there any tricks to kind of know when I'm reaching that kind of ideal portion?
Yeah, awesome question. So, again, like the size of my palm, and then back in my retail life when I was engaging with people, like, a larger male might be, well, my hand is like 10 ounce, or whatever, of course. So just as a small little just visual example, since my hand's right here, a deck of cards is kind of like a good reference point as well. And we know that's a standard size.
Right.
So it's a smaller portion compared to what you might get in a restaurant, compared to if you purchase a steak, that steak is not cut to 3 ounces, so just being aware of that and, kind of adjusting. I don't think you necessarily have to get out a food scale, because that's just more complicated and time intensive and all those things. But I think just a loose visualization can be a helpful strategy there. And we don't want to we don't want to further complicate things for people. If they're in the kitchen, we want them to be kind of as comfortable and get it done as quickly and easily as possible, right?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And that, yeah, just like the palm of my hand. And just to clarify, is that before it's cooked? Is 3 ounce weight before cooking?
Would be, yeah, like kind of,
Okay.
it would be after it's cooked. I'm sorry, would be like the actual, no, I'm sorry, before it's cooked would be the kind of the visual size.
Okay.
Yes. So if it's like a
Okay.
fresh piece of whatever kind of protein, that would be about that 3-ounce portion. Cause yeah, when it cooks down, it is losing some of that juice and so on.
Right. And so would it be recommended to, like, let's say I'm not getting the leanest ground beef that I can get. Maybe I'm getting 80% or something, 80-20. Am I reducing my saturated fat intake if I'm pouring off some of the juice that cooks down?
It does. And I don't have like a specific stat, but yes, if you can, cook it down, like, in the skillet, once it's fully cooked, drain that off. It does reduce it slightly. Because again, the other thing is some of that's water, so it's not all
Okay.
fat. So it's certainly not reducing it down to like a 90% fat, but it's still
Sure.
saving a little bit. So again, it's kind of cumulative. So if you're able to do that, certainly that's a recommendation that you can consider, or a kind of a strategy you can consider. I was just going to mention too, I've gotten people asking me, like, should I rinse it? I don't really think that's necessary, because I feel like it kind of just sounds messy, and, it's like one more step. So I think just further draining it and just being careful when you are draining it, that you don't accidentally lose some of the protein, in that step. You're doing good, but you don't want to lose what you've just cooked. So yeah,
Right.
that can definitely be a helpful
And
little
I
step.
do believe that the guidance from the USDA is not to wash raw meat, as it can splatter those germs across your kitchen.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
so that
Right. I was thinking that too. I'm like, how much do I want to go into this? But yeah, you're right. From a food safety perspective, like, then you're just further just like kind of displacing any, so whatever source of animal protein. Yes, you really don't want to be like adding more juice, adding more liquid that would further extend the surface area, I guess.
right.
What you're
And
saying, for sure.
well, one question you mentioned a couple times in your presentation about like freezing extra portions, or kind of, you said, I really liked your line, like cook once, eat twice. I'm going to use that one.
Mhm.
And I guess I'm wondering if you have any tips on safely thawing foods that have been frozen, either raw meat or cooked prepared portions.
Sure. I mean, goodness, like I would definitely say, to USDA is a great resource for all the food safety things. So if we do any
Okay.
kind of recap, I mean, I can pull some specific links together that would give you really specific guidance, and even really, not everything is meant to freeze for a year. Not everything is meant to freeze for 6 months. So like understanding kind of what that window is, just so again, you don't lose quality of whatever you're freezing. So side note about that, but in terms of thawing, I know it may seem quicker and easier and better just to put something on the counter in your kitchen and leave that thaw, and that is not what you want to do. You really do want to put it on the lowest level of your refrigerator, so it's not, so if something does drip, for example, it's not going to touch any ready to eat food, so that it won't drip on your produce, which of course you'd wash, but I think you kind of get the idea. So you just want to be careful with handling it. It is frozen, so it feels like it's safer, but when those juices start to thaw down, you just make sure it's not touching other types of food. So I would say like in the refrigerator, probably thawing like up to 2 days is typically where you would be.
Okay.
And then for cooking and reheating, you want to cook that to at least a temperature of 165, which can be tricky when you're microwaving. So we know microwaving, there's a lot of hot spots and it can be really inconsistent. So for something like a microwaved, a reheated beef chili or something, you want to make sure you're stirring it. Not to say you necessarily have to use a food thermometer. I mean, that would be like the gold standard, but you want to make sure that it is hot enough, that it's not lukewarm, so ideally heating to 165. So I guess I'll kind of just emphasize that and, kind of just using discretion, I guess, when you're reheating.
And is some of that maybe accounted for in a slow cooker or a crock pot if like we know that the food inside is being held at least 165 typically, or maybe even 200?
What's your actual, like, what's the question though?
Like would a slow cooker be a fair proxy to know that the internal temperature has been reached without having to use a thermometer or something like that?
Typically, I think you can probably in most cases like visualize, like if it's, if a piece of chicken or a piece of beef is undercooked, the texture in a crock pot, for example, I feel like you would know. But again, right. A food thermometer, you can get pretty basic ones, or again, maybe for individuals here on the call, maybe that's something you could help to source for individuals if that's possible, a very basic thermometer probe, or something, just as a thought, because again, that's the only way you're really going to know with 100% certainty is to check that temperature. And I think a word on slow cooking too is that you really don't want to put something in there that's frozen. You really want to put like refrigerated foods only in a slow cooker, because if it's coming from the freezer to the crock pot, or I shouldn't say crock pot, the slow cooker, there's just potential for that temperature danger zone where that food is thawing and it's not where it should be in terms of temperature. So putting it into the crock pot where it can heat up faster and get out of that potential danger zone is better. So I know sometimes people will say like pull out of the freezer into the slow cooker. For one, that will take a lot longer over time, but you really want to put either fully defrosted and or refrigerated food only for food safety reasons.
Okay, that's really helpful. I didn't know that one. That's a really helpful tidbit. Cool. Let's see if there's anything going on in the chat. Folks, please feel free to put your questions in the chat.
It looks like there's something in the Q&A. I don't know.
In the Q&A, someone said very impressive session. So thank you very much.
Oh, awesome. Okay, good. Well, Eli, I feel like you're asking a lot of really great questions. So hopefully if there, one of these questions would have maybe addressed something that someone else out in the audience was thinking. And, we would have covered those bases. But, again, I think to close, you see my email address there. So you can email me directly, or nutrition@pabeef.org is another way. That's kind of a more general email box, I guess, if you will. But, I'm happy to share resources, or if you have a question that you didn't want to address maybe here in the larger group, you can always email me, and I'm happy to collaborate. Another fun idea could be, again, if you have an idea and you want to execute a virtual class, but you're like, I don't even know how to make this happen. Either I could support you in doing so, or even help to co-lead a class. So maybe that would be something of consideration as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for that offer. That's a really, really helpful resource. So really thank you for being able to, share your expertise, share your time. That's really, really helpful. Thank you so much. It looks like one person asked, will this session be available? The recording will be available. It's on our YouTube channel, which there's a link to our YouTube channel, which houses all of our other recorded webinars from this past year. The channel can be found at the bottom of our emails from our listserv, our newsletter. The announcement for this webinar itself has a link to past webinars. So I definitely encourage you to check that out. or revisit this presentation, because there were a lot of really wonderful, not just topics, but like practical tips and ideas to really advance some of these like affordable ideas for more nutritious foods and living. So really, thank you so much, Beth.
And I know I cover a lot, and I also know that I speak quickly even on a normal day, but on a Friday, I know I probably spoke even more quickly. So that's one of those things I'm always working on. But, again, if you take the information and you digest it, and again, you have questions, happy to serve as a resource. Another kind of idea too, just that Eli and I and Kristen had kind of tossed around with the idea of like a cook along. So even for this audience, if there's like another topic that you think would be relevant, or another kind of, activity, I guess, we can collaborate again and try to bring something different to life. If like a virtual cooking kind of demo would be of interest or helpful in any way. But
awesome. And just forever, where are you located, Beth?
so I'm in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. I don't know if anyone is familiar with, small town Selinsgrove. I always feel like I have to say we're about an hour from Penn State. We're about an hour from Harrisburg. Susquehanna University is kind of in my backyard, so I feel like that's notable. But Central PA, born and raised, and I did live outside of the area and went to Penn State, so I'll be cheering on the Lions tomorrow.
Awesome. Yeah. So Pennsylvania through and through. We are so glad that you were able to join us. Oh, it looks like we have someone else from Selinsgrove area. So that's awesome. We're all pretty much local, so it's great that we're able to support nutrition in Pennsylvania, particularly around affordability and kind of diverse nutrition. So thank you so much.
Awesome. So Deborah, I see. Yeah, I mean, I kind of live in that same area, so gosh, we may be neighbors and not even know it. So send me a note if you'd like to connect. I mean, that would be great. And thank you, Judy Dodd. I definitely recognize that name, so I'm glad you're on here, a fellow dietitian. I'm glad you joined us today. So thanks again, everyone. Thank you, Eli and Kristen, for helping to bring this to life, and I hope you all have an awesome weekend.
Yeah, thank you so much, Beth. Have a great day, everybody. Be safe, be nutritious, and we hope to see you next week at our next webinar. And Beth, we hope to bring you back for another webinar, topic TBD, in the coming fiscal year, which starts October 1. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time, and have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.